Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. A big warm welcome to you from USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. I am your host for this show, The Listening Mentor, where we give you in-depth ways of looking at your relationship, looking at yourself, looking at ways that you can find inner peace and be a part of world peace. Yes, all through listening. Joining me is the star of our show. Her name is Caroline.heward, and she is located in the United Kingdom. She helps people bust their stress. Let's welcome her. She is our resident therapist here at USA Global TV and Radio, and she also has her own show called Talking Heads and A Woman's Prerogative. Let's welcome her now. Hello.
It's always good to be here. I love this show. It's just so that we never know what's going to hit us, do we? We have a topic and then it's all breaks loose. It's always fascinating, this show.
It's very true. And, I find that we're always coming back to the same thing, which is setting boundaries and asking permission. Boundaries, listening, being fully present. These are skill sets that are not just innate. I mean, they're things that we really have to work on if we want to be an excellent listener. We want to have good relationships. But of course, it takes two or three sometimes. It depends how many people in your family or relationship, whatever the situation is. Before we get into that, Caroline, I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you help people bust their stress. As you know, we have new people joining us all the time, and they might not understand what that means. So give us an understanding and tell us about the ridiculous offer that you have going on right now.
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. I help people bust their stress, and I do it in quite a unique way. I identify the root cause of what's creating your repeating pattern of stress, whether it manifests in your physical body, whether it's mental, so anxiety, depression, stress, whether it's emotional, and which will be sadness, loneliness, heartache, crying, weeping, or whether it's behavioral, and that could appear in your relationships in terms of always complaining about a relationship, or somebody did this to me, or somebody did that to me, or within your work environment. And how we are in one situation and one area of our life is how we are everywhere. So if we are angry in one area of our life, we'll be angry in other parts of our life. And that's because there's some undealt with emotion, undealt with issues. And I identify the root cause using root cause therapy and chakra psychology. What that does is it alleviates the originating reason for that symptom. And not only does it do that, it releases the emotion from the first event when it started. So you will feel an overwhelming level of peace, inner calm, and more importantly, you'll get an incredible night's sleep. My ridiculous offer that Dr. JACALYN has asked me to talk to you about is that I'm offering an initial free discovery call for 15 minutes and then an hour consultation, which is normally much, much more expensive, and it's £50 for an hour, where I will identify 3 root causes of your repeating patterns and the way that stress manifests, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or behavioral. And that is an offer running at the moment. I'm not sure if I can keep up this ridiculous priced offer for too much longer, but right now it might be limited. So please do book in. You can reach me on nomorestress@live.co.uk, or call me +44 if you're international, 07523 if you're local, 120 189. And follow me on my social media platforms, which is Facebook and LinkedIn. Reach out and take advantage of this ridiculously time-sensitive offer.
You know, it's important what you just shared there, and I love that, is especially as business owners, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we feel nervous putting something out there and then taking it off the table. It's like, oh no, you know, maybe nobody will pay a higher price. Of course they will, right? This is an introductory offer that you're making for people to find out what it's like to work with you. So take advantage of it now. All right, let's get into the topic. I want to start off by saying, you know, I've been moving around quite a bit and able to look at different people, you know, people watch, if you will. And it's kind of interesting when you see the dynamics of 2 people. And many times I see people just not paying attention to the other person at all. It's like one person's talking, the other person's looking around in space or scrolling through their phone or staring out into the sky. What is it that makes true active listening so difficult for some people?
That's just such an extraordinary question, Dr. JACALYN, because this is something that's asked so often, and we get, in our current times, we're very caught up on our phones and social media, and we have a lot of distractions, you know, lots of noise. And the reason that it's hard for people to actively listen and to be focused on the person that they're speaking to is because they're used to having all the distractions. They're used to being on their phone while they're having a conversation and checking a text message or looking at an email. And this is something that's become very synonymous with how we live in our current times. When I was growing up as a child, it wasn't like that. We just did one thing, and we worked hard or we played hard, and the phone during work time, it was, you know, when you left work, then they didn't really have any way of contacting you, which was really cool. Now the work has extended in terms of you can be reachable at any time, even at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night or in the wee hours of the morning. And so because that's happening, we're in a distraction mode of living. And so it's very hard to come out of that and be fully present. And so many people don't know how to be active and present because there are so many distractions that they don't know how. And so this is a skill that has to be learned. And whenever I do a consultation with someone, they always feel incredibly calm and relaxed and more peaceful, and they can't work it out. And it's because I'm fully present, and it almost forces the other person to be fully present with me.
And that's so important. And you can see in the relationships where people are actually listening to one another. I have held some courses, and I've done some of them virtually, and I've teed up the the course by saying, I'm going to be observing your behavior. You actually were at one of the courses, or maybe more, as an observer. And even though you tell people you're observing them, watching their listening behavior, they're not listening anyway. They're not listening to you tell that. They're not listening during the course. I have a question that I want to ask about the impact of listening when it comes to something that's going on with your health. So, for example, let's say you are a healthy person, but you happen to be very hungry. And all you keep thinking about is, I've got to get something to eat. I've got to get something to eat. Or you're really thirsty. That in and of itself can affect your ability to listen, let alone you have major things going on in your life. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because if you're hungry and your stomach is gurgling, you know, that hungry, that your tummy is really, really making noises and you can hear them and you're not quite sure if other people can hear them. Usually they can. If you hear them, other people do. But that gurgling sound is a distraction. It's your body saying, hey, I need to eat, you know, feed me. And it's gurgling to let you know. And sometimes we don't consider that we should eat, but we think about it. And we think about it so much that we don't do anything about it. And the thinking about it is a distraction in itself. And so there's no way that you can listen while your tummy is gurgling and while you're thinking about food. Because if the other person asks you, so what do you think about that then? I have seen many people look, oh, can you repeat that again? Sorry, I didn't get you. Sorry, I didn't hear you. And that doesn't make sense to me. But they come up with what I would call excuse lines to say that they didn't understand you or they didn't hear what you said. And you said it very clearly and very succinctly that they didn't hear because they were intently thinking about their gurgling tummy and when they were going to have food.
Absolutely. I mean, Caroline, what I'm wondering is, just to set the stage, if you were to approach me and say that you needed 10, 15 minutes of my time to talk about something, and I happen to be hungry, for example, would it be appropriate for me to say, I really am interested to hear what you have to say, but in order to give you my full attention, I've got to get something to eat? Is that okay? Or is that demeaning? Or is that putting you off?
No, I do the same. I don't always say, sometimes I do, but it just depends on what situation I'm in. But if they've called at, say, just after a show, for instance, and I've got a little routine now, you know, I have a shower and I cook something to eat and I'm eating at a certain time. And then I say, right, I'm not free until after 9. So I give myself plenty of time to shut everything down from the show and cook something and eat and prepare, you know, for my evening and relax. And so I almost build that time in. But sometimes people might catch me on the hoof and I'm in the kitchen. And so I do say, oh, I'm sorry. I've picked up the call because I didn't want to miss your call, but I'm literally in the middle of cooking my meal and I really want to eat my meal. So would you mind if you call back at, you know, and I usually say an hour later, just to give me plenty of time that I'm not rushing a meal. And so it's only if they catch me on the hoof and I'm, you know, sort of in between that I kind of get honest and I tell them. But yes, I have. I didn't used to be like that. And that's why I'm sharing this as a point. If somebody called me and I was in the middle of my meal, I would answer the call. And sometimes I'd be in a call for about half an hour, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. And then my food was cold and I would eat cold food or have to reheat it, or I'd eat very, very late. And it used to make me feel that what that situation led to was quite frustrated, that I'd eaten very late, it was cold, and it wasn't as appetizing. So now I built in the time, and that was the case of being a little bit fed up of people calling me at the time that I was about to eat. And I felt that having my meal was more important to make sure that I was nourished so that I could be the best for myself as well as the person that I was speaking to in that call. And a gurgly tummy while you're in the middle of a consultation isn't great.
That's very true. It's very true. So again, with our title, Discovering the Impact of Listening, to some people, they're listening and they're thinking, what are these two crazy? I mean, listening is just something that we do all the time, everywhere we are. But that doesn't mean that we're doing it well. And so I just want to clarify, that's part of the reason that we're here today on this show, is to help give people tips to learn how to be a better listener, because when you are listening at an elevated level, people notice. Caroline, can you think of one or two individuals, you don't have to say their names, but can you think of one or two people in your life you would say or standout listeners that you can just think back in time and go, that person really listened to what I had to say?
Yes, and not so long ago, where I just, sometimes we need to say stuff. Sometimes we don't need somebody to be interacting and having that opinion or discussion. And when we just need to say stuff, and when you're living alone, it can be very opportune to need to say stuff because you're not speaking on a general basis to people. And if you just need to almost have a sounding board, say what you need to say. And when you finished, it might have been 20 minutes or half an hour later, the feeling, the experience of being heard, that feeling internally of knowing that somebody was there and they listened, is quite profound. And it makes time disappear very quickly. And also the experience of feeling that you were listened to makes you feel, and the other person, a level of deep inner peace, almost like sort of like a release for both people, because it is a meditative state. And I've said a couple of times quite recently, thank you for listening, because I didn't need the interaction of solving something. I only needed somebody to listen. And that's because I'm such a good listener for many other people. And that was made as a comment, that I'm such a good listener generally. It was lovely for them to listen to me. And I thought that was quite extraordinary for me to hear, because I didn't realize how much I needed to just say. And this is what happens, especially when we're going through personal challenge, that it's important to say things, because when you voice it, it almost diminishes the depth of the intensity of the challenge. And so they say, I don't know whether it's in the US, but we have a phrase, a cliche, a problem shared is a problem halved, where you're not solving or trying to explain for the other person to explain what to do. You're literally opening up, sharing, and it makes you and the other person feel different.
Brilliant. Absolutely. And I think what you just shared really hit home for me as well, because sometimes we have things bottled up inside of us, and all we want is for someone to just be there, but not speak, not give judgments. Did you think you should do this? No, we just want someone to listen. But by nature, by human nature, we are problem solvers. And so when we love someone or care about someone, what's coming up typically is we want to help. We can help by providing a solution, as though the person didn't think of the solution. And by the way, how do we know it is the solution? That's the thing that I think really stands out, is that we think we know what's best for someone else, but how could we? Because most of us we have our own challenges in our own lives that we're trying to figure out. How are we going to know what's good for you? So listening at an elevated level means listening without making a judgment, but this is a tough thing to do. So Caroline, as a therapist, would you guide someone that it's okay to think the judgment in your head when you're being the role of an active listener? Or do you have to have a completely open, clear mind?
Oh, that's such a cool question. No, it's not cool to be thinking about what to say and not say it, because while you're in conversation in your mind, you're actually not able to listen to what the other person's saying. And this is a key to active listening, that it means that you're so open for that person that you are listening with everything, with your mind, with your ears, and with your heart. And I want to share something with you in terms of, I saw a meme recently, and it really resonated with me. And it was the two ears joined together in this picture. And the two ears joined together created the picture of the heart. And I thought it was most extraordinary and profound because I'd never seen that depicted. And when you're listening with two ears, you connect with the heart. And that will stay with me forever. And I still need to share that meme because I thought I'm gonna share that when I've not got a lot of other shows and posts, and I'll share it in the middle of the week. And I thought that was an extraordinary thing to acknowledge, that the two ears, when they're together, they create a picture of the heart. And the heart is where our deepest inner knowing, inner peace. And this is where our compassion for others and for ourselves are. And this is a place of healing as well.
That's truly beautiful about the heart. I never knew that, but now I can actually picture it. Yes. And I personally, I think of children, and you've brought this up many times over the years, but that childlike wonder and that innocence and, just getting out and playing like children do. And recently I had the opportunity to be with my great niece and great nephew, and just to realize they don't have any judgment. They're not fearful. These are human traits that we learn from adults and that we carry out as we get older. So I love listening to other people and their perspectives. If they're speaking in a respectful manner, if they're being respectful about something, I like to hear other people's thoughts and where they stand on certain things. And I'm not judgmental of them, but I have to say that that's not the case for many people. They just can't help having judgment about things that they don't agree with. So if somebody's out there, they might be out there now watching or listening and thinking, well, this is ridiculous because I don't believe that you have to clear your mind to be a good listener. I don't believe that you shouldn't offer solutions. How can we get to these people and they don't have to, by the way, it's a free world. So how can we give ideas for people to open up when they just don't see the value of it? Or is it okay we just say, okay, that's how you're doing your life, and do it that way?
One of the things that I do, especially in a consultation call, is I share what it's like and I give examples. And so one of the examples that I give is, can you read a newspaper as well as have a conversation? So can you read stories in a newspaper as well as having a deeper, meaningful conversation eye to eye? And the people that do that, so of course you can. The people that are doing it and then it raises a question internally for them, they say, no, of course you can't. And it catches them out because it's something that they're doing. They've actively got the newspaper in front of them, in front of their eyes. Somebody's having a conversation with them and they're behind the newspaper, reading the newspaper. And they can't see, there's no physical interaction in terms of the gestures, eye contact. And so tone is the only thing that's there. And then when the person is asking, what do you think about that idea? They usually kind of grunt and grumble and say, sorry, can you just explain that again? It was too confusing. I didn't understand it. And these are catch-all phrases that they say. So they almost plead like that they didn't understand, or you need to explain it in a better way. They didn't understand what your meaning of what you explained. And when they say it again, then it's very clear that it wasn't confusing. And so it catches them out, and it's behavior. It's not something we think about. It's not something we're aware of until somebody points it out. And when we become aware of that behavior, and many times people are reading a newspaper or looking in their screen and they're having a conversation or trying to listen and saying that they're listening, and they're clearly not able to do it because if they're asked a question, they can't answer. And so that's the place of awareness. When they look at their behaviors and they see that they weren't able to answer the question, or they'll have these little catchphrases of, can you repeat that? Sorry, I don't understand what you mean. Or that doesn't make sense. Run that by me again is another one that people will say. Or that sounded a little bit confusing. Please explain that again. It's because they didn't hear you, because they weren't listening, because they were engaged in doing something else. And it's that when you point out and they have an awareness of their behavior, that's the point. From awareness and understanding and insight that changes can happen.
I'm smiling back here because I did a similar experiment, I'll say, in a couple of the classes that I had. I had one person at a desk and another person behind them. And the person at the desk, I may have showed this already, they had to write down as many of the 50 states in the US that they could think of in alphabetical order.
Wow.
And the person behind them was telling them what they did for the weekend.
Oh,
So,
gosh.
they couldn't turn around. So it was very interesting because what was happening was, and it was supposed to be a role play, but they were really two human beings who were doing this. So the person writing was getting really annoyed and wanted the person behind them to stop talking. And the person behind them was getting aggravated because they kept talking louder and louder because the first person wouldn't turn around and look at them. So at the end of this very short exercise, like 5 minutes, they were both exhausted.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's exhausting trying to do, and I'm going to use that word operatively, trying to listen as well as do another task. And at the end of a day, if you've been going through your day like that, very distracted, and I call it the distraction, when you go to bed at night, there is no distraction and you are mentally and physically tired, really drained because of all that distraction that's been going on, that you were never really in one place or the other. You were doing both things and not doing anything very well. And that really brings to mind the fact that when people don't feel heard, they will raise their voice several decibels so that you do hear them. And so when you hear that people are shouting, and I certainly know people that speak very loudly and shout, and that's their normal, it's because they are trying to be heard over the noise and the din of what's happening around them. And many people tend to shout when they have a TV in the room and it's on. They're shouting to be heard over the TV, over the radio, or over conversation, so that they are wanting to be heard. And I've seen situations where people have been together and the one person raises their voice a little because they don't think the other person's listening. And that is responded by the other person raising their voice louder. And so by the time they have finished their exchange, they're pretty much shouting at each other, which is not pleasant as an experience. And it's also very draining on your energy and on your mental ability to focus and concentrate. And also it's very draining physically. So when you go to bed at night, you'll be totally worn out.
And that's when you know you're really listening. I've mentioned this before, but I don't do as many TV shows as I used to. I think I do about 5, whereas before I was doing 40. And it was too much. By Friday night, I didn't want to speak to anyone. Just leave me alone. Don't talk to me. And I found that listening at that level is trying, so to speak, because you're giving so much of yourself to the other person. And I think it also feels similar as to when someone is taking your energy, or you're in a room with negative energy and that just starts to envelop you. So I'm just throwing this out there. Is there any comparison or analogy that you can take away from that when we think about the power of listening at an elevated level and the power of positive energy?
Yes, I have this firm belief that everything is energy. And that was proven by Einstein. E, energy, equals mc squared. So everything is energy. So in looking at negative and positive energy, I believe that everything is energy. And so if there's too much or an imbalance or a blockage of energy, this is what causes the problem. And so if there's too much or a distraction or something that's draining you, that means that there is a blockage and it creates a negative effect. And so I want to look at it rather than saying positive and negative energy, saying that it has a negative effect on you when you're in that kind of distractional situation where, one, you don't feel that you're being listened to, two, that you're not feeling heard, and even more to the point, three, that the other person feels the same. And so at the end of that exchange, both people feel very negative, and it's the experience of not feeling heard or listened to, or indeed not feeling that you can express how you truly want to express yourself, that the other person understands you fully.
Thank you, Caroline. Is there any truth in this statement? A person who listens at an elevated level typically will have an open heart.
Oh, yes, I quite agree with that. I quite agree, because when you are listening totally with the other person, you are listening in different ways, from your heart, from your ears, from your eyes. You're also listening in terms of your body connection, your physiology, gestures. Have you ever been in a situation where there's like sort of two people in like having dinner, and they're having a conversation, or they're at a bar, and they get closer and they almost lean in, and you can see them, their physiology, they're like leaning in, and you know that they're in a very deep connected conversation. And you can see alternatively people that are not in a deep connective conversation, that they're stepping back and retreating. And it's so obvious, because the heads go in, the arms go in, you know, that the foot, one of your feet steps forward, and your whole physiology goes into the person. I'm just leaning in now, and you'll probably see more of me and feel more of me than me leaning back. And if you're in that physical space of an interaction with another person, it feels very much more, very much closer. It's a much more intimate connection. It's not good if there's one person that's leaning in, wanting that conversation and really going for it, and the other person's leaning away. And so if you see that, and there is, I call it the energy dance, when I've seen people at a bar, for instance, and that the man, for instance, is taking steps forward and the woman's taking steps back. And every time the man steps a couple of steps forward, the woman's taken a couple of steps back. And then when they move back, the woman moves forward. And it's all done without being consciously aware. This is behavioral, when somebody feels you're encroaching their space. And when it works is when you get closer and closer, where you're almost on top of each other, because that connection and that elevated experience of, you know, they call it heart to heart, don't they? A heart to heart connection, you know. And there's also other phrases, you know, I'm having a heart to heart, or I'm having a tete-a-tete. A tete-a-tete is head to head, you know, so it means that you're closer. So there are phrases and cliches that we use to express this feeling of a heart connection, you know, a heart to heart, a head to head, you know, tete-a-tete. And we're having, some people say we're having a conflab. And that conflab is that the fact that it's a more connected conversation between two people.
Woo! You hit all of them there. I love that. Yes. So I'd like to encourage people to start looking at body language, maybe your own body language, the body language of your partner. Just stand on the street if you live in a city or someplace where people are walking by, and just observe the behavior. One thing I think that's difficult to do, and it just happened to me recently, is you have a group of people and you're going on a walk. And some people are ahead, some people are behind, and you're not all walking in a straight line. And you're like, yeah, but you don't want to fall while you're walking. You have to see where you're going. But I don't find that that's a great time to have a high quality conversation. But some people like that. They go out on nature walks with other people. It could just be two people. But if you don't know that path like the back of your hand, and it's winding, it's going up and down, it's very hard to be physically present, because you have an innate sense of keeping yourself safe from falling.
Absolutely true. I've been in conversations on my mobile while I'm walking, and I've taken a wrong turn without realizing, because I'm so deep in that connected call and conversation that I'm not looking where I'm going or aware of where I'm going, and I've taken a wrong turning in a situation of where I've gone to that place many times thinking that I know it really well. And I frequently said, especially if I've taken a wrong turn, I said, hang on a minute, hang on. I've taken a wrong turn. I just need to check where I am. And I've asked somebody, and I'm still in the call. I said, I just need to work out where I am. And then I make sure, and I leave them hanging on the call because I don't want to lose them at the same time. I want to make them aware that I'm walking and I'm not, sitting in one place. And then when I get on the right path again, I usually end the call in a nicer way as possible, saying, I'm so sorry, it's really difficult for me to talk and work around to get into my destination. So I'll catch you later when the event's finished. And that's being very honest. And sometimes I've had calls where people are walking and I can hear all the background noise. And if I can hear it, they can hear it. And so I wonder how distractive that is for the person in the call. I've also had people calling me when they've been in a supermarket and I can hear the beep, beep, beep. And I've said, what's that? They said, oh, I'm just doing my shopping, my weekly shopping in the supermarket. And I thought, what? And it's something that I hear a lot of. And at the same time, I'm surprised. And it happens. And many times people have been speaking to me and I'm listening very actively. And I've heard them say, are you still there? Are you still there? Yes, I'm still here. I'm listening. And they say, oh, right, it's just that you're very quiet. And I said, it's because I'm listening to what you're saying. And when it's appropriate and you ask me a question, I will answer it. But I'm listening and I'm genuinely listening and doing nothing else. And that, for a lot of people, is a bizarre experience because they feel deeply relaxed during that conversation, and more to the point, they also feel that I heard everything, and that makes them feel different.
So true. Just to unpack what you just shared there, many times someone will say, are you still there? Are you listening? And I feel it's because they haven't felt listened to or heard before. And so it's an anomaly. They're waiting for someone to jump in and say something and interrupt them, provide a solution. But when they get used to it and they accept it and they feel, I am worthy of someone listening to me. Because sometimes if you haven't been listened to for so long, you're insecure. You have an inferiority complex, potentially. You're the therapist, you would know more about that, but you don't feel the value that you really are due, that you owe, that as a human being you should have the right to. So please keep that in mind out there when you're thinking about yourself and your self-worth. You have value. Every one of us has value, and if someone's not listening to you, maybe they're not the right person to be in a relationship with, or maybe they're not aware of it. You can bring it to their attention, or maybe you can have them call Caroline and they can learn some skill sets. So Caroline, we are at the end of our show already. I want to just share something. First, we have your LinkedIn profile right here. By the way, a nice reminder for me, it's time to give out the awards for 2024 very soon. Yay. So here's Caroline on LinkedIn. Let me put up the thing here. And we also have Caroline on Facebook. Let's take a look at this. By the way, love the consistency.
Oh, well, it's the brand.
Yep, the branding is excellent. So thank you so much. Caroline, what would you like to close out with today?
We've had a very powerful show. I really feel that anybody that listens to this particular episode will have a sense of awareness, especially if some of the things that we've shared about non-active listening resonates with them. And my invitation for you is to observe yourself. When we become our own observers, we move into a place of elevated listening, because when we're not in the place of distraction and when we become openly observing, everything becomes calmer. And this is where you connect with your heart and create a place of inner peace, not only in yourself, for the other people that are around you, your connections, your community, your family, anybody that you come into connection with. And so this isn't just about listening for the hell of it or for the sake of it, and just because you feel that you have to. This creates a level of deep inner peace. It'll promote extraordinary levels of deep and therapeutic sleep, which I would call restorative sleep. When you wake up, you'll feel very, very revitalized and refreshed. And it's because you moved into a place of listening and into a place of observation rather than a place of distraction.
What a beautiful way to end the show today. Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you to each and every one of you out there who are watching or listening on the live or the replay. We're really appreciative of you. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of this show. And I think we will actually be in person, potentially. That would be
wow.
That would be really cool. We'll have to work on the logistics of that. So thank you, everyone. Join us for our next show, which is coming up right after this. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.